Good morning. It's Wednesday, March 26th. Sorry we missed you yesterday. We had a long floor on the Senate. We started at 9:30 on the floor on the Senate, and it went past our time as far as to meet as a committee. Before we start today, just to update some folks as far as what's going on in some of our bills. Friday, I testified in Senate Natural Resources about our miscellaneous bill. That kind of mirrors S100. I think it went well. I don't know why it wouldn't get some traction in there. We'll see what happens. That bill was dead until we went in there, and then I think it got a little bit more light. So that's good. So we'll see. We'll track that a little bit. The right to farm bills on the House version had a good hearing yesterday. I'm hearing that there's broad support in that the Ag Committee to pass that out. So that's good news for us. Kind of some of our major legislation that we've been trying to do for a long time, especially when we got a room full of small farms who are just trying to eke out a living in Vermont's climate and soils. And for those that aren't aware, the Right to Farm bill is going to put the onus of somebody making a complaint against farmers on the complainant versus making the farmers prove to them that they are not being harmful. So it's something we've been trying to pass for 10 years or thereabouts, and it looks like it's making its way to this building at a good time. We can see with what's going on around the world, more than any time, we need to make sure that farmers in Vermont who have contributed to making $4.2 billion economic impact in our state, rivaling it with tourism now. So we can all say, which we all knew anyways, that we are an agriculture state above all things. So congratulations to everyone. And I can say that a lot of that has been accomplished because of the resurgence of small farms in Vermont, small farmers in Vermont with 23 different classifications, which is very, very important. And so I think the thing that I'm most proud about of seeing as chair of this committee, other than my committee in itself, is the age groups that we're seeing come before us, trying to make things happen. Where dairy's age group is 58 years old on an average, we're seeing younger and younger folks come in and making things happen. And a lot of the positive signs. One is your aversion to debt is pretty amazing. It goes against a lot of what the typical stereotype of young people would be. So just your hard work, and it doesn't seem like you like to borrow much money until it's absolutely positively critical that you do. And seeing how you guys make it go without making a lot of money is pretty amazing. So we're going to spend some time because we have Rural Vermont Annual Small Farm Action Day in the State House, and we have Carolyn Sherman Gordon, Legislative Director for Rural Vermont, going to lead us off.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, dear committee, for having us all here today. Small Farm Action Day is a format Rural Vermont has been doing for also over 10 years, I think, now in the State House, and it's really a format that allows our members and allies to make their learn about the legislative process for one, but also make their voices heard, their needs heard, express their recommendations, and meet with their legislators, build a relationship to their legislators, and we hope we do it always as like an open format. We're a nonprofit organization. We don't prescribe what people will bring to this format. We even invite members of other agricultural groups to join us for this day. Keep it open in that way because we think it's important to have a format like that a couple times a year where, maybe issues will be brought to your attention today that are, pending to legislation, but maybe also not already reflected in pending legislation that where there's needs that might not have a vehicle yet in the legislative body. So that's why we think an open format is important, and also gives you a chance just to hear from a broader array of agricultural stakeholders and learn about those needs that they want to bring forward to your attention. So that's all I have to say. I will really pass it off. I will just also say we're back to back with having to be upstairs in the House Act Committee at 10. So after we heard from our first four speakers, I will leave the room with those four to make sure we're on time upstairs while the last two speakers still finish off. And unfortunately, we had one cancellation from one of our board members, Earl Hadley, who will not be able to come today. But with that, I think I will pass it off to Beth the Baker.
The Baker.
Baker.
There is a Beth the Baker. I'm the Baker Beth. Ironically, thank you for taking my testimony. I am here to ask you to exempt the licensing requirements for home bakeries with gross annual receipts less than $30,000. I am asking for this exemption to adjust for inflationary costs, which will help me feed more families in my community. I bake sourdough bread, 100% New England ingredients. I buy all my flour from Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, and we get all our cold pressed sunflower oil and salt from New York. I'm a sole proprietor, so I do it all. I mix the dough by hand, I bake the loaves, I pack each order, then I head out for delivery, I send reminders for pickups, and then I collect with all my farms that I work with to do the marketing. This exemption will allow me to grow at a more sustainable scale and increase the food resiliency in my community, and that NEK, which is in a bread desert, kind of like they stopped delivering bread that way at that point. I thought it was important to note that this was based on gross receipts, not net profit. So for my $6 loaf, I make $1.90 after cost of goods, overhead, taxes. So under the current $6,500 cap, I would only make $1,900. And you need profits to grow and reinvest. So, and of course you can go get a loan, and I'm trying to be very savvy, and I'm not at that level yet. This is our second year. So I don't need to jump from small to giant. I just need the middle. It's also important to note that a lot of other states have much higher caps than ours already. California went up from 50 to 100,000. This year, New Hampshire has had a $30,000 cap for years. And then Maine and New York have no cap at all. So it just keeps us competitive for people like me not to move away to those states that have better incentives. I also have 15 years of background in the professional baking industry. I've operated commercial scale ovens that bake thousands of loaves, mixers that use hundreds of pounds of dough. Examples, Clingers, O Bread, August 1st. I've also worked at small brick and mortars. I've filled pastry cases, and I've increased their efficiency and overhead. Red House Sweets, Tucson's Bakehouse, Sweet Simone's. And now I hand mix and I bake a dozen loaves a day. And I just think that the scale, I think the bill would fit the scale properly if the overhead, the licensing requirements for home bakeries with gross receipts was less than 30,000. So thank you sincerely for listening.
What is the fee, the licensing fee that you're asking to be reduced or eliminated?
It's exempt from, it's $100
A year?
a year. Yep. But again, I only made $1,900 last. And I try to keep my prices very fair because of where I'm located. I think last year I did $5 off all my loaves, and that's unheard of. There's nobody in the state that does that. But the quality of ingredients that I use, and I just am promoting all the farms around me by all the grains that I do.
No Sam.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I was wondering where those are. I thought maybe they were outside or something.
We're in
Sounds
Jeffersonville.
delicious.
We're gonna have waffles this year, so that'll be really cool. Featuring local grains, einkorn, buckwheat. Yeah.
Have you met the gentleman from West Glover, who's got sunflower oil.
Seth Johnson.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, I just went to the grain growers conference.
Yeah.
At the Essex, and everybody, I brought bread there and everybody loved it. It was great. I don't get to meet a lot of the farmers. It's usually like your order's packed from the farm, pick it up. I'm not there. So, but I got to actually shake hands and they got to taste their flour and my bread. So it was really cool.
For 12 loaves a day, you're baking now?
Huh?
You're baking 12 loaves a day?
So I can only operate one day and I am efficient. So I bake all my bakes that day back to back. It's a wood fire oven. So it's more than I hit the cap and I stopped baking, I guess would be the better way to say it. And last year I stopped baking in October and I only started in May. And I had to say no to a lot of people.
Who are your customers?
This year we started a bread CSA. So everybody's pre-signing up, which is more sustainable and better than a farmer's market. Not better, but all the bread I bake will be sold and not to be like, oh no, it's raining. I hope it's a good market. But I go to 3 farms in my area. So Westfield, there's Berry Creek, Jeffersonville, the farm between, and in Johnson, Footbrook. And they can place a single order to have some retail loads, but they're also a pickup point. So there's about a dozen families at each farm that has signed up to pick up their bread on Fridays. Yeah, so they get 2 loads each.
And are you looking to get bigger at some point, or are you gonna keep it at
I
very medium?
wasn't. I was told it was going to take a long time for this to move through, so I had paced my plan. But if the cap is raised, then I'll open another day a week or a couple days a week, and I can open up my CSA, which I had to close because I hit my cap for CSA members. So I could bake for 60 families instead of 30, but yeah.
And currently you're not year round, from what I'm hearing.
Right, because I kind of stopped. Yeah, so I could bake longer if I.
Why'd you have to stop?
I hit the cap.
Can you just tell us about, I know we're on a time constraint and all that, but it can't leave, some of this unanswered. So, what's the cap?
For bakeries, it's 6,500. If you're canning, it was 10.
Okay, so what happens after the 6,500?
People get licensed and, it just means you have to get licensed. And I'm not ready to be like.
And licenses, the whole, another inspections and all of that, everything.
Yeah, and then it's about equipment and
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
and I don't need
It's a whole
to,
different
I don't need to
classification
operate,
as
yeah, I
far
don't
as
need
what
to
you're
use
trying to accomplish.
big
Okay.
mixers and that huge,
Okay,
I'm not
we
gonna
get
use
that.
commercial equipment, so I wasn't at a licensing level. And from my experience, I was like, what, I'm tiny, like I've worked in big places, it's not big. So,
And how'd you come up with 30,000?
I didn't,
This is the bill,
This is the-
401, is introduced in-house by Jonathan Cooper from Pownell. And it's up for 3rd reading. at
Okay,
some
okay.
point, So we should be seeing it relatively soon, but it's to raise the cap on small home food processors.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you for answering the questions and, we appreciate it very much.
Yeah. But I don't know where the
Come to
numbers were.
Jefferson, though, yeah.
Might have been.
Hello,
Morning. Good morning.
I'm Christopher. My son Wyatt is going into this.
Mr. Laskin.
Piana from Barnard, Vermont. Been farming for 17 years, my own business, and farm with my brother John, Fable Farm. And we could definitely use your help right now because we're in a situation and would appreciate you to clarify on back. So thank you for creating this space to take my testimony today. This is my first time participating in this way. And I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'm here to ask you to clarify Act 181 by crafting an amendment that exempts multi-use structures primarily used for farming and or AOFPs from requiring an Act 250 permit. Suggested amendment language is provided at the bottom of this testimony record. This year marks the 17th growing season of Fable Farm. What began as an organic vegetable CSA and wholesale farm in 2008 has evolved into a diverse vegetable perennial fruit winery and cidery called Fable Farm Fermentary. Over these years, my brother and I have worked tirelessly to create a farming model that is financially viable appropriately scaled to our land and independent of the chemical heavy pesticide practices required for certain markets. Our experience over time and more recently through our work with the Farm Viability Program has made it clear that direct-to-consumer sales are essential for our farm survival. A few years ago, our wholesale to retail ratio was 80-20. However, after a significant downturn in wholesale sales and losing over $10,000 due to unpaid invoices from national distributors, we made a major pivot to increase our direct sales. Throughout this evolution, one core principle has remained: cultivating a farm as an interactive place where people can connect with each other, the land and the food and drink produced here. From our earliest CSA pickup days, we provided space for live music and shared meals at potlucks. This has been essential in drawing customers to our farm in a rural space, allowing us to sustain our agricultural business. Music has never been a separate activity. It has always been a natural extension of our farm's culture and community engagement. A tangible example is this: we always had a sliding scale donation, 0 to 20. So we weren't just to pay the musicians. Now, after 15 years, we made it 5 to 25. So no one's turned away for lack of funds. People know that. It's a community space. In 2011, 4 farms, Kiss the Cow Farm, Eastman Farm, Heartwood Farm, and our farm, Table Farm, came together to form a cooperative to access land and share a lease of a beautiful idle dairy farm, the Vermont Land Trust. These farms evolved the Fable CSA pickups and potlucks into a veritable market called Peace Field, where for the last 10 years, we have collaborated with the local arts organization Barn Arts to schedule the music, an organization that was established in 2011, 2012 sometime by one of our first interns. In addition to the market, our co-op currently has a lease on all the farmland on both sides of the road, as well as on a 275-year-old conserved barn located on the farm where the partner farms store and add value to their raw farm products. At the end of last year, the NRB issued us a notice stating that a multi-use pole barn structure we built last spring is in violation of Act 250 and requires a permit. Their rationale is that the structure was, quote unquote, principally constructed as a stage, and that Act 181 prohibits farms from building infrastructure for, quote unquote, non-farm activity without a permit. However, this interpretation misrepresents the reality of our operation. The structure is used primarily for agriculture, storing hay, bottles, and farm equipment for most of the year, and is only occasionally used 15 to 20 times in the summer as covered space for music. Moreover, the structure itself is a classic agricultural pole barn, built minimally using round spruce trees that we harvested and peeled ourselves. It sits on piers and blends into the natural working landscape of our farm. The town administrator recognizes it as an agricultural structure, and our project is fully supported by our community and the Barn Select Board. We strongly believe that what we are doing is not commercial entertainment, but an expression of agricultural life, one that fosters community engagement and ensures the survival of small farms like ours. The structure in question is first and foremost an agricultural building. Good design allows for multi-use flexibility, and it is important that Act 181 reflects this reality. I urge you to clarify Act 181 by crafting an amendment that exempts multi-use structures primarily used for farming and or AOFBs from requiring an activity permit. We live in a world of nuance. This amendment would provide necessary flexibility for those of us generally making a living from farming and enriching rural communities, while ensuring that unrestricted event spaces do not proliferate under the guise of agriculture. Thank you again for the time to share my thoughts, and I'm happy to return to further testify or provide additional background information as needed. There's quite a bit. I also warmly invite any of you to visit our farm and see our work firsthand. So we've been in touch with a lot of people and appreciate being able to come here and express our situation.
100% behind that. How A&R ever get notified that you were doing this and put their nose into it? It's
This may be a little speculation, but it's pretty certain speculation. I'm talking with the select board because no complaint was ever made to the town. No violation was ever brought up to the town. At first, the current use folks removed our project from current use. It had been in its entirety. And the only reason we discovered that is because the tax bill just exploded. When we called current use, they said, talk to your town assessor. So then I talked to the select board, who gave me the proper language to reach out to an outside contracted assessor. He responded with an email that was completely off base in the sense that he had completely misrepresented our project. It's a licensed creamery, our kitchen. He says that by the Agency of Agriculture, he says that it was a commercial structure. And when we invited him to tour the space and to become educated on our project, as well as to clarify his misunderstandings, he then failed to respond. And then 3 weeks, the current use folks restored our establishment as a current use. We're going through an audit currently, but that should be fine because it's a working farm. 3 weeks later, we got a violation from the NRB. And so it's just conjecture, but the timing seems to correlate. And talking to one of our select board members, it's likely that he communicated that. The interesting thing is if our town was up in arms, our select board was up in arms, if,
You have zoning in your town,
yep, we have zoning in our town,
and they have said nothing.
and we apply for permits every single year, tons of permits for manufacturing alcohol, for outside consumption, for restaurant, you name it. We have so many permits. And so there are all these different ways that our town could communicate their dissatisfaction with us. We're in the middle of nowhere. We figured it out. 17 years into this, the Agency of Agriculture is getting tons of grants, try to expand markets, institution markets, all these different markets. And we dialed it in, and it's been a hard go, to be quite honest with you, to make a living farming. And so for my son to witness this right now, it's like cognitive dissonance at the highest degree. And one that won't look good in the environmental court either, if this is where it has to progress, because coming after 4 organic farmers that are rehabilitating water, are farming in such a way that that supports our community, right? And so I think this is an opportunity. That's why we come to you with this opportunity to help us retroactively clarify that law that unfortunately created almost 2 tiers of citizens with maybe not intentional, but so.
And who's pushing it? Where's the rub coming from?
I think
Who's sending you the letters?
well, the current use originally, but then the NRB. So, and we met with folks connected with them too, and
Yeah, I was gonna ask what's been their response. I've been to your place.
yes, we thought we had come up with an interesting solution of talking to folks within the scene, and one of the gentlemen clearly articulated he had no desire to work with us and try to get an understanding. What I think should have happened is the NRB should contact
Say the words out loud, and we know what they are, but for whoever's listening, NRB stands.
the Natural Resource Board. So I think they should have probably called us and asked for clarifications personally and had a dialogue, right? I know that's not how it works, but
It should be how it works.
But they're getting a set of information from one person who doesn't even live in our community. And so I just feel like they should come out, they should visit, they should tour this, they should talk to other people. Whatever it is. I'm interested in actually growing some of this legislation next year. So we're wanting to work with multi-stakeholders and collaborators to evolve. So because I'm working with farm viability, and when these folks are working with us and they're seeing our numbers as far as like how much I need to scale up or what the margins I'm receiving, literally, this is a boon for farmers. Like, I mean, I was in the wholesale market, like I said, for a long time, and it is a vulnerable situation. I have no recourse right now for the state of Washington distributor paying me $8,000. Even their liquor control says they have no recourse. So, I mean, if this was a dairy situation, I know you guys could take money right out of their account, right? But we were left with no other opportunity for viability. And so, not to mention, we designed our entire business from making vinegar, making wine, without having to participate in that scaled up, like race to the bottom agriculture where I'm having to buy tons of inputs. This is a totally grounded model that could be huge for Vermont. And I get it because greenwashing, folks who are going to abuse loopholes are not going to help my business at all, right? So, but I believe just like what they're finding is bacteria neutralizing radioactive waste right now. I believe the healing antidotes within the earth design already. So as legislators, we need to create pathways that allow folks devoting their life to a path of good and to execute, right? Instead of having to, what I feel is being harassed right now. And, but it's an experience, it's a new experience for me. So, but it's also my livelihood. And my brother's livelihood and a few other farmers' livelihood. One of my longest term employees is now part of our cooperative and running sheep and meat birds to our vineyard orchards. So this is a developing agricultural model and project. And so I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Just one last question, so we're gonna get to everyone. Well, there might be others as well. What are you producing?
We produce all the vegetables that we serve on the farm. We produce vinegar, wine, cider, tons of herbs. We produce tons of perennial fruit, grapes, pears, apples, tons of sort of more superfoods like black currants, elderberries, sea berries. We have a raw dairy on the farm producing ice cream with their product. They do layer hens. There's sheep. There's pigs. There's cows. There's meat birds. So that's the food that the whole entire cooperative produces. So a full diet essentially experience. And then by forming the cooperative, we are able to get a jurisdictional opinion from the NRB originally that what we were doing is permitted, because almost everything we're serving is from our farm. And what isn't served from our farm is like from beans from Morningstar Farm or their organic wheat, or cheese from Parish Hill or Snowbird Farms, right? Or All Souls tortillas that are buying corn from Vermont farmers. So we're not cutting corners. We're supporting the local farm economy, and we're educating the community about how important it is to support Vermont products.
And how many acres total?
Well, it's a humongous farm. So there's two sides. So I'd say over 500 acres agriculture. So there's like beef operation rotating, the dairy up rotating. The whole property is probably over 1,000, but a lot of that land is like forested and
500 open acres.
I mean, maybe it's like four. I don't know the exact. I know the Clark Farm, which is one of the oldest standing farms in our town that the town can serve. It's a beautiful farm. It was setting idle. The farmer was killed by his bull. And the old timers came to me and they said, well, what could we do here? So we went and talked to the family, talked to the land trust, and provided her life estate so she could live her life in the farmhouse while these multi-farmer stakeholders, because this is all about trying to create solutions for rural communities, right?
Sounds good.
And so that's the 250 there, and it's probably another 200 on the other side. They're both old dairy farms, right? Good dairies too, but unfortunately that model wasn't able to continue in that space. So
the issue is the pole barn definition.
the issue is that they're saying that the structure we built is principally constructed for non-farm activity, and that being a stage.
And do you have language, or is it in a bill?
Yeah, I have language here. Yeah.
Can you, for all of you as well, because the only one I'm seeing right now is the first presenter. If we could make sure that you get us all your testimony, get it to Linda or whatever, so we can post it on our committee page. It's very helpful for us to go back and to look at what you're saying. So
Yeah,
How many months out of the year do you have the band? How many days?
we do our Peace and Field program goes from the last Thursday in May until the end of September.
Once a week?
Once a week.
So, gotcha.
It's like 15 to 20
Oh,
times
that's your
training.
primary use of that barn. That's how they came up with that.
Exactly. It's hay for sheep. After that, yeah.
we're good. Anything else?
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I might reach out to you to come visit the next one.
All right. Thank you.
And we have Chris.
Hello all, I've been to Chris's farm, it's magical. I've been to the shows and everything, so my daughter used to work there, so I fully support them. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Chris from Green Mountain Sativa. I'm here to
Good to
discuss.
see your last name.
Oh, Chris Lilly.
Thank you.
I'm the founder of Green Mountain Sativa, a small sun-grown cannabis farm in the heart of Vermont Green Mountains in Stockbridge, just down the road. Today I want to share a bit about my journey and my farm's mission and why direct-to-consumer sales is really important for us. I started Green Mountain Sativa because I believe cannabis is a force for good, for wellness, for community, and for the land. Like many of you, I grew up surrounded by New England agricultural heritage. My aunt and uncle were dairy farmers. I was raised on a small family farm. This has taught me the value of hard work, stewardship, and connecting directly with people who rely on my products. At Green Mountain Sativa, I grow cannabis the way we grow everything in Vermont, sustainably. We use regenerative practices. I prioritize soil health, avoid synthetic inputs. Everything comes from my farm, my chickens, my ducks, my compost that I use to feed my cannabis plants. Our plants are nurtured by sunlight and me, my own hands, you know, there's no pesticides, nothing like that. Our focus is on quality. But here's the thing, none of that matters if I can't reach the people who need my products the most or want it. Right now, Vermont's cannabis farmers are trapped in a system that works against small scale farmers. When we sell through wholesalers and dispensaries, we lose up to 70% of our revenue to middlemen. In perspective, every $50 product a customer buys, we see less than 15 from that. And that's not sustainable for us or any farm really. But it's yeah.
And I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I'm sorry to,
No, go ahead.
just, who exactly are the middlemen?
Retailers, wholesalers.
Okay.
Yeah, are the other middlemen. And I fully support my retail partners. I want to make that clear. And they support direct to consumer too when I talk to them as well, because I think it benefits them if I can talk to my customers and tell them what I do and build my brand personally. Because right now I can't. It's in the hands of whoever the bud tender is, like the retailer, whoever the wholesaler is, and it's whoever they pick to grow. Which I've been fortunate, but there are a lot of my fellow farmers who aren't as fortunate.
Right.
It's not all about the money, you know, but when you can sell directly, like I said, I get a chance to tell my story, you know, and show people my farm, which I invite you all to come out to see my farm. And when I grow, I'm a grandmother, I'm a mother, you know, I grow vegetables, I raise chickens and ducks, everything. My plants, why sun-grown, I want to explain to people why sun-grown flower has a unique terpene profile, how our composting program reduced waste. And I can talk to people and say, this is the flower that works for you, or this is the flower, you know, they can smell it, they can see it. That's one thing that cannabis is a lot. You pick what works for your body based on smell. And we can't smell it in dispensaries anymore. That's not allowed. We're not allowed to open it. We're not allowed to look at it. Let's see.
If you were to sell to the open market, like you're asking, I think that's what you're asking, right?
I'm gonna say yes.
Who's gonna regulate you?
What do you want? Who regulates alcohol? Like, is that what you mean? Like a regulator?
I mean, as far as where it is right now, there's pretty big regulations. There's people that are checking to make sure that you're doing with what you say that you're doing, because everybody says they're gonna do what they do,
Right.
but we've had a few problems as far as finding pesticides and stuff.
Right,
in there.
right.
And I'm not saying that that's what you're using. You're saying you're not, but they're saying the same thing. So who's gonna regulate you?
I think it's the same regulating body that regulates me now. The same that regulates retailers. I'm not asking for no regulation. I'm asking for a permit to allow me to sell direct to consumer. And that means maybe someone would come in and
But you can do that right now, right? I mean, can't you apply at the town level and apply for your own store or do your own place or whatever? I mean, aren't you asking to put yourself in front of others that are doing it the way that the law was intended?
like retailers.
Yeah,
I'm not asking to be put in front of them, you know, because I don't want to take away their business. I would still sell to them as well. I'm just asking to be able to build my brand and meet customers on my farm, show them my farm, show them what I'm doing. And then they would go to retailers. Our brands would be bigger. You know, they'd be not necessarily bigger, but more personal. We're a Vermont brand, you know. Right now it's we don't want the corporations coming in to take over our brand. You know, we want a small producers, right? It's now we're going, you know, the small agricultural community in Vermont. And we raise more than just, you know, we have more than just cannabis.
Mhm.
But I do think it's important. So when we sell directly, we can keep our profits to reinvest in our land and employees. They get fresher product. Yeah, go ahead.
So what stops that from happening now? Because I'm kind of confused.
Okay.
What the chair said that Can people come to your establishment now and
No.
they cannot?
They cannot.
She doesn't have a license.
I don't have a-
license to sell. You have
Right,
to,
right.
Okay, so you have.
But they can't even come and see my products really on the farm.
they can, I mean,
You just couldn't sell it to them if they came to look at it.
Right.
But if you filled out for the license, you could.
If I did a retailer license, which my town doesn't necessarily allow, you'd have to go through that to get a retail, I'd have to build a building and do that. If there was a smaller option, maybe, you know what I mean? But the $10,000 is more than,
Just trying to.
yeah, I
understand.
got you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's basically, I do think it would help our retail partners though. My retail partners support me in this. I think it's overwhelming. Everyone I talk to thinks that, well, not some of the largest ones, but the smaller retailers, they think it's important. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for the same rights as maple syrup producers, cheese, apple orchards. 12 other states allow it to happen.
but
Yep, go ahead.
forgive me.
No, you're good.
Because again, it's gonna sound
Absolutely.
like I'm anti-cannabis, and I'm not. But maple syrup, and they're not an intoxicant, and I mean, I get that people feel that there's other benefits, and I agree and all of that, but at the same way, it's not affecting you. To use maple syrup and cannabis are two different things.
What, so alcohol?
And highly regulated, right?
Yeah, but you can still do it on your farm. I could have a festival
Right.
and I could have a permit.
But still highly regulated.
Right,
And everybody knows what's in the product, and
Correct.
so that's what it is, and with what you're asking to do, you get away from that.
no, I'm not asking to get away from regulation.
But you are, in a sense, that who's going to inspect your product to make sure that you're doing the same thing that everybody else is doing in that business? And here's the little bit of the rub that I have a little bit. And it's very contentious to get into the state, and we got into the state, and I think it was the right thing to do. But at the end of the day, there's rules to follow, and everybody's following the rules. And then if we start to cut those rules, then we have to cut the rules for everybody else, right? Because you don't want to put yourself in front of everyone. But, everybody else is following the rules, and if you're gonna change the rules, it changes for everyone. You can't just change in this setting of what you're asking for, where everybody's done it the way that the laws have been written. You're asking to change the law significantly from the way it was passed. And I don't know if that's gonna happen.
I understand. I do want to make clear, I'm not asking for any of the inspections and everything. I do all my own inspections and then I hand it to the retailer. They're not responsible for any inspections.
They are, though, as if somebody goes into that establishment, does the test on the product that you provided, and it ends up being not in compliance, the dose, or there's pesticides, or there's something in there that's not supposed to be there. So they are getting tested. And then what they're gonna do is, whatever happens, I don't know the process of, but I imagine before it's all said and done, it's gonna come back to you. It's certainly gonna come back for them,
It's
but
definitely going to come back to me. It all comes back to farmer.
so,
Yeah, I agree with that, but I want to make clear, I'm not asking for regulations to be discontinued. I am asking the survey that Tufts did was the number one thing was direct to consumer, farmers need to survive. So if I'm asking that you allow us to have agritourism, that we can, build our brands. That's all. I'm not asking for less regulations. I totally believe in the regulations. We need to be tested. We need to make sure there's no pesticides. We need to make sure there's good players in this. And I think my farm is a good player. And like I said, I invite you all to come out. I feel like sometimes I'm treated as a drug dealer, not a farmer. And I am a farmer.
Do you have somebody that could write up language for this, that what you're describing
Yes.
you'd like to do? Because if we had language, then we'd be able to interrogate it a little bit more.
Okay.
As our chair is pointing out, the rules are pretty clear, and as we change it, it changes not just to get you there, then it changes for the distributor as well. So
For the wholesaler?
the wholesaler and the distributor,
Yeah, I got these.
the retailer. Okay.
The retailer, yeah, I don't think it changes for them. I don't think it changes for the wholesaler. I think there's a lot of farms, there's a lot of people that aren't buying from retailers. I'm gonna make that really clear. The black market is, or the, you know,
Well,
illicit market is
I
still,
don't think you're ever gonna get rid of that. I mean, it's, and I think there's a lot of people that had advocated for a lot of things, not just in marijuana. I think, but a lot of people for solar, for wind and all of that, that wish they hadn't have gotten to the point that it had because they were looking for the power to be free. But then of course it gets regulated and that's where it is. Same in cannabis. You're not going to stop the black market of it. There's a lot of people that said, hey, you know, wouldn't this be great if we could sell this legally? And then once they have to sell it legally, they said, well, you know, there's a lot of regulation with this. So I don't know that you're going to get away from that black market of that. And that's people's priority to do it that way, to grow it, to sell it, to buy it in that manner.
Mhm.
But you know, as Senator Heffernan had said, language would go a long ways, and and you can see where it goes. Yes,
For next session.
all right, thank you.
Which ready?
Senator Major.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The one thing that we have to take a look at, and it's most important, is unintended consequences. We may do something and it may seem on the surface that we're addressing a need, but there may be ramifications on the other end that we don't look at. So that's one of the things. So like Senator Heffernan and the chair said, we want to make sure that we see language and then see how it comports with the current laws that we have on the books. Did that make?
Oh, yeah, it makes sense. I know this isn't gonna happen overnight.
Right.
This is a process but I think it's important to start a conversation about, you know?
Yes.
And let's be honest, if this was not a problem at the federal level, a lot of what we're talking about would be going away. The difference between alcohol and cannabis is one is legal
Mhm.
and one isn't federally. So it adds a complicating factor, I think. Vermont was very thoughtful in the way that we came about with the Cannabis Control Board, putting licenses in place. You can only do certain things. You can't stack them all up and start from the growing to the selling kind of thing. There are different licenses involved. So it is different in that respect. You could say what you want about what's going on in Washington, the uncertainty they're in and all that. It probably is not going to be federally recognized in the next couple of years. If I were a betting person, I can tell you it's probably not going to happen. So I think that complicates things here. Vermont has done a really carefully crafted system
Mhm.
in order to grow and eventually sell cannabis. So it may not fit exactly what you are doing right now. If you wanted to get a retail license, there's ways to do it. But again, you probably have to put some money into it. I know the licenses, you said 10 grand, then you got to have a building and you have to go through a bunch of steps, but that's where I'm at. I think the chair's delicately tried to phrase it that way, that again, if this was not a problem federally, you probably wouldn't have any problems.
Yeah, I agree. And I do know the CCB supports this. I have talked to them as well. Outline, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
And James has been here on.
Yeah.
on the morning.
So, yeah,
So Chris, we're gonna move on,
okay,
just to allow the other folks some time. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you. for listening.
And
Thank
if
you
you
very
want to
much.
send us some language and some of your testimony to that, that'd be helpful.
Okay,
Thank you.
Hi.
Right.
Good morning. Thank you for taking the testimony and taking the time. My name is Ethan Kramer. I'm from Fairfield. And my wife and I have a small plant nursery and cannabis license. And I'm here today, like Chris, to talk to you about some of the issues that we face and in particular direct to consumer. And I'm eager to answer some of the same questions that you just asked her. I grew up in Fairfield. Everyone was a farmer in Fairfield when I was a kid. It seemed like it was the rare family that didn't have a barn full of cows. Now there are only a couple of farms. They're big farms, and there are a couple of small farms. They're organic, they're grass fed, and they're dairy. And those are our heroes. Those are the people that we look up to. Vermont has done a great job with the cannabis program here in the state. And we stand out in New England. We stand out from New York across the lake, but we're at a turning point now. We don't have an oversupply. We have a bottleneck. At retail, everything goes through that intermediary. And so small farms are failing. They're going out of business, and it's going to continue to happen. And what we know about cannabis is that when you grow it at scale and you have acres of greenhouses, that's not a good product. The quality plummets. And so if we continue down this road and only the big money players can stay in, then what we're going to see is a poor product. We're going to be just like Connecticut. And that's not what we want. You know, it's like we have an opportunity right now because we were successful in bringing the black market into this adult use market. We have a world-class, unique cannabis market. And I know not everybody's into that. So we bring a lot of money in.
And I'm sorry to interrupt your flow. You mentioned something as just like Connecticut. Can you explain what's going on in Connecticut?
It's what we call a captured state. It's corporate, it's big farms. It's not small farmers. It's not people like Chris and I who are integrating their cannabis operation into a larger ecological project like the Christopher Fable Farm as well. And it shows the quality is terrible. You go to the dispensaries, there's nothing good. And it's not like that in Vermont. Right now, we still have a lot of small farmers that are seeing every plant every day and makes a difference.
So when you say larger, they still may be Vermonters.
They may be.
They may be, but they just are doing it at a larger scale so that they can sell it for cheaper and
And
don't
put
get
the rest of us out of business. Yeah.
Okay. And what's the size? I know nothing about cannabis.
We have
How many acres is your farm? And
Well, we have 11 acres of land, and we have the smallest outdoor license that you could have, which is 125 plants, which, you know, this is not acres and acres. That doesn't work. 125 plants is actually a lot to manage when you're just two people with a young son. It's plenty for us, and we produce a premium product. It's good, but without another way to reach consumers directly, it won't be sustainable. And this will be, it's just going to be a bloodbath for small farmers.
We really kind of want to ask different questions than what we've already done. We've already kind of got that take on that. What controls the pricing for you as far as what you can sell for and what the retailers can sell for? Who dictates that?
In some ways, the retailers hold all the cards, and the farmers know that. And the ones that have more than they can sell are willing to drop their prices. We're outdoor cultivators, so we have one harvest a year. We can't get much cheaper than we are and have it make sense.
but doesn't the buyer? It's like when you go in, you got your really expensive coffee that I know this is worth it, so I'm going to pay more. So your retailer, you're like, I'm not going to sell it to you cheaper. If you want, you're just afraid they won't sell your product and you'll be stuck with it. Is that because it's like, if I was a cannabis user, then it's like, oh, I got the everyday Pepsi.
Yeah, but it's not only just cannabis, it's liquor, it's
Yes.
beer, it's the wine, it's
Yes,
all.
it's like the Vermont liquor companies get a lot more, like Whistle Pig, there's one that's right here in Montpelier, I can't think of it.
Bar Hill.
Bar Hill.
Yep.
Their product is almost double what you pay for so they don't range it when you go to the retailer that way. Or your product just doesn't sell enough to get that demand to say, hey, I need your product.
I mean, our product sells, but there aren't that many retailers, and there's quite a bit.
But as far as retailers though, I mean, aren't we like double like what New Hampshire is or any other state? Don't we have more retailers than, wasn't I reading that a while ago that we're actually flooded with retailers? And that's why the retailers are having a hard time making a go of it because there's too many retailers. I know in Middlebury you have a problem with that.
He owns 2 stores. He asked if he could do a mandate. He says, can the state do a mandate right now to not allow any more because the market's getting so saturated with retailers.
Yeah.
And he goes, that's what's also pushing down your price because now he goes, I had 2 stores that are doing great, but now 3 other stores just popped up. And he said, not cheap to start a store either. But he goes, like you said, bigger money comes in and they're trying to push it out, which is saturating the market, which is affecting you.
Mm.
So that's free market. I don't know if we're gonna be able to.
It is free market. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No.
I think there's a deeper motivation there when retailers are asking for retail to be shut down. We need to look at what are they asking for and why, and what, we're the producers. We're the ones that struggle. The retailers, they have a huge markup, and our retail partners, the ones that we work with, we really like them. They're doing well. None of them are still sleeping in the back room while they build it out. None of them are still the buyer at their business. We're still this is going to be our 4th growing season, and we're still like the retailers were in the first 6 months. It's just not, it's not the same.
So you push down on your retailer saying, hey, I'm giving you a premium product and you're working me down when you should be paying me premium price for my premium product.
We have those conversations. Yeah. I do want to address the question of regulation, because we know that we're heavily regulated and we know that's not going to change. We did a background check to do this. We have inspections. We understand all of that. We're the good guys. We're trying to do it, and as far as what do we expect? We expect to continue to be heavily regulated. I think there are ways to do this that are sensible. It's not crazy. It's not, you talk about alcohol, and alcohol is different. Alcohol is different in a lot of ways. It's a lot more destructive. We're coming in with an open heart and trying to make this work because we think it can be good for Vermont, good for our farms, good for our families.
Well, thank you, Chair. Well, I'm not going to argue with any of that. That's good. But give us some language that you would say, here's what we as producers or growers would like to see to help our business thrive, being that, can I sell it at my place? What can I do about that? Because I don't know enough about it, and to even, I do know about demand, and if you have a premium product to a so-so product, that you should be holding out for a better price. But
I know our Lieutenant Governor is working on some of this as well, and I'm going to have a conversation with him about that.
Yeah.
And we get you. I know there's a lot more you want to say. We get it.
Thank you.
Get us some language, and we'll have some further conversations with it. And we're going to move on to the next.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Provide some quick context as an alcohol producer here. We have access to a class 4 license that is a very simple license, very affordable license that allows us to sell our alcohol products directly off our farm.
Right.
So it's just part of that bundle. And so I think that's what they're asking, just for context.
But again, as Senator Collmore said, you don't have that federal problem. You don't have that federal problem.
I just wanted to make sure
It
that
changes a lot. You're in a lot different industry. It's a lot different industry, both of them. And so I think you get into that.
So we have 2 more folks who are gonna stay here, but I'm gonna take the first 4 that just finished.
That's fine. That's why I'm trying to respect everybody's time.
Thank you all.
very much. Thank you, Carol.
thank you.
Sorry, I didn't bring really.
No worries.
Look at us. We're doing fine. There's a ton of us.
None of us are starving.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to catch up with you later.
All right. Yeah. Okay, let's cut that door and we'll continue on. Who's next?
Okay. Good morning, leaders. My name is Ernest Caswell from Milton, Vermont, commonly known as Buster. I'm a farm worker at Champlain Orchards down in Shoreham. I'm a volunteer with Pastone Corporation. Pastone has a very small office up in St. Albans, Vermont. We specifically work with farm workers and pesticide workshops, yeast stress, and things of that nature. I come to talk to you mostly about Oh, yes, this week, is National Farm Worker Awareness Week. All across the country and Puerto Rico, we recognize the hard work, our skilled, dedicated, hardworking agricultural workforce brings to our country. And here in Vermont, there's roughly 63,000 agricultural workers, roughly 9,000 working on farms. And one of the challenges to grow our agricultural community that is missing, because to grow food secure, and you've heard a lot of testimony where the need is great, you know, our food security. Our food banks are in great need of it. Here in Vermont, we only grow 3 months worth of our own food. We're dependent on outside. We're a $2 billion industry. And we greatly appreciate our farm workers, and our industry is only going to grow. And to help our agricultural industry grow and have the workforce required to do so, so we can meet the needs and the goals of the Farm to Plate and other organizations, farmers. We need a home. We need a home. Farm workers and farmers and beginning farmers. We need a home. Access to an affordable home. Here in Vermont, the homelessness crisis is number 4 in a country of 50 states. It's not good. And presently, funding from the Vermont Housing Conservation Board, roughly $5 million, began to work on some of the basic needs. That $5 million has started a repair program, which has improved present on the farms. And there's another part, 120,000 to replace and or build homes on the farm. And the focus is on the farm. Farm worker housing, there's more than one type. There's also off the farm housing. And in some states, there's even emergency shelters, if you would, temporary places where they can go in between jobs. For example, we know our labor force starts in the south and it migrates a little north and east, and those workers often need a temporary place to stay, and there's one of those in Ohio. It's the only one. And here in Vermont, development of off-farm homes, like we build homes for our seniors, we build homes for our low-income folks and our workforce. Other states have built homes off the farms where farm workers, beginning farmers, retiring farmers can go and rent and have a place to call home. And they can rent on any, and they can work on any farm, but they have a place that's not connected to the farmer. And building homes costs a lot of money. It's a huge investment for a farmer. And our farmers in these days, it's a lot of an asset. And to build one of the examples that VHCB has done with Champlain Housing Trust it was like 6 funders, Efficiency Vermont, 6 funders just to build that one home for, I think, 4 families. So Champlain Housing Trust, Addison Housing Works were to develop homes like Maine, New York, all over the place. There's homes off the farm specifically where our agriculture works, have a place to go home and and go to work every day and grow food, milk cows, pick apples, harvest the lettuce. And to get to that point, if we had a farm worker housing committee or a task force, it will flush out the recommendations where our housing communities will have more information, more of a study, more data, where they can say, hey, that's a good idea. We could and should and can and will and recommend a developer, and here's a little money to build homes for farm workers so they have a place to call home and supply our community with fruits and vegetables. We all need a home, and to grow food, our farm workers need a home. And the committee and the task force can do that. Dan Baker has already facilitated at least 7 meetings. We had an in-person meeting in November of 2019 and 7 stakeholder meetings since then, all informal, that have brought to where we are today. And all we have now is a report on the farm housing. If you read the 65-page report commissioned by Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, that came out in April in 2021. And since then, you've only heard progress from Champlain Housing Trust. You've heard some of the needs from Dan Baker, and you've heard some of the needs where we need homes from our farmers. And as a farm worker and a farmer myself, my mom doesn't like me using the word farm worker. You're a farmer who works for a farmer. And many farm workers are farmers who work for a farmer. And that's true. And we come from all over the world, Jamaica, Mexico, South America, Canada, to work here in this great state of Vermont to grow valuable food for our community. So a committee and a task force can bring the data. So you could recommend this to the housing committees or others and see the data and the recommendations yourself, so you can keep the work that's just started in 2021 based on the report from published, and you can see that report if you haven't read it, please do, from Vermont Housing Conservation Board. It's under one of their resources. It's Dan Baker. He could bring you up to date on the status of any future stakeholder meetings, and I constantly advocate to continue the dialogue, because that's what's missing is the dialogue, because I know farm workers need a home. My organization, Past Home, owns homes in New York, specifically for farm workers to live in and work on any farm they choose. And we also own the Migrant Rest Center out of Liberty, Ohio, where farm workers have a place to stay temporarily till they get to their next place or their next home.
Are they more like bunkhouses, or are they actually apartments?
Referring to off the farm housing or on the farm?
Like on the farm,
On the farm housing can be defined as many things. Some of them are single family homes. Some of them may have a couple of apartments in it. Some of them are a mobile home. Some of them are what you call camps or bunkhouses. They are specifically for like a large community of workers to live in, and they often.
I think we gotta be careful about that a little bit, Buster. I mean, I know there was I don't know the whole specifics of it. but we had a situation where we had on the news, a roofer, that was bringing in workers and putting them up in bunkhouses. And it wasn't sufficient. And I'm not saying that they were doing right, wrong. I don't know because it was
I don't
very,
know either.
but it was certainly at that point in time, all those people lost the housing. And I don't know how the workers, I can imagine that if they didn't have a place to go, that either they were left or were in more squalid conditions. I'm not sure, but, I think we get the gist of what you're trying to say about the housing part of it. I think we understand that. I think we could really spend 3 more hours on this and maybe not get down to the solving that problem. But,
You're just scratching the surface on all the work that you had already seen. You don't know what the needs are in the possible recommendations could be, including tax breaks and farm worker housing. The descriptions look at it national. Okay. And they are similarly national. So even at the national level, there's overcrowding. Something that you may not know is under federal law, the H-2A workers, because they're under contract, those homes are inspected. And currently, I do believe it's the Agency of Agriculture that is tasked with that particular thing. And the other piece of the puzzle, bring in data and regulation and in information. And this is federally funded as well. The state has a state monitor advocate. They also are to make sure on our farms that the housing requirements for the H-2A workers and others are up to standard. And I don't know if there's any violations. I don't look at that. I just advocate we need to do more and we need to look at recommendations and we need to develop off the farm housing opportunities. And the committee, much like the stakeholder meetings that Dan has done, will bring forward studies, recommendations that you can use in your future writings and recommendations that you could turn over to the housing section of the legislators.
fair enough.
Thanks, Leslie.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Who's that?
How are you all on time?
We're fine.
You're okay? And
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I never met you. Are you sitting or are you?
No, I'm with
Got it. Okay, then I'm last.
That's for us.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jean Hamilton and I'm the Director of Program Development for the Land Access and Opportunity Board. I think I've been in with you all before, so you
Yeah,
all
you look
know.
familiar.
Okay. So yeah, I'm really pleased to be joining my friends here from the rural Vermont community, and also you all. Appreciate your time. I'm going to be talking about land use mapping of agricultural lands. Before I do that, I just want to raise your attention. There is a bill that I think is still in committee in House Housing called H-169, which creates an opportunity to ask landlords not to demand Social Security numbers when pursuing rental applications. So building on what Buster was just talking about, this is one tool that the migrant justice community has identified would increase housing opportunities for our farm worker communities. Right now, many of them are restricted to housing on farms because they cannot apply for rentals because of their Social Security status. So just wanted to make sure you knew that bill was out there and keep an eye out for it. But as I said, I'm really here to talk about future land use mapping and agricultural lands. So from the position of LAOB, I've had the pleasure of watching closely the future land use mapping that is underway right now. That was mandated by Act 181. in the regional planning commission spaces. So those future land use maps, do those feel familiar to you right now? What is mandated in the past?
In the what?
In Act 181 mandated that all of the RPCs develop future land use maps that align. One of the things it does is all of them are using the same zone terminology. So we have now statewide terminology, and these maps are intended to align with the new Act 250 paradigm. So these future land use maps demonstrate where is tier 1, where is tier 2, and where is tier 2, 1, 2, 3. From observing these processes and the development of these maps, it has become very clear that something that is missing in the Act 181 language was a plan for how to map agricultural lands. The only way agricultural lands are being mapped in those maps right now is the current use. So literally the only agricultural land that's being mapped is what is in current use. That means that our future land use maps, which should be looking towards what is the future need for agriculture and agricultural lands in our state, is relying only on what is currently enrolled in current use. We are not looking at where are prime ag soils, where are opportunities to develop new agricultural positions. We're not looking at risks to agricultural land, like loss due to farmers retiring and those farms coming out of ag land, or flooded ag land that becomes unusable, or ag land that is lost to development. So you all with me still? Okay, great. So as the LEOB, I think you know that we are here as the board to look both at equitable access to housing and land. So I am in no way advocating for decreasing housing development to protect farmland. What I am advocating for is that we do both strategically, and we don't put our agricultural lands needlessly in harm's way and at risk in an effort to make housing development much more accessible. So specifically, what I am recommending and asking for is that we look for an opportunity to amend the language in 181, possibly with language in the miscellaneous ag bill that asks the regional planning commissions to create a future ag land map. So specifically that we look at where, a much deeper analysis beyond what is in current use currently, to actually look at what are our agricultural land resources that we have in the state. I have a list here that I want to pull up so I don't miss anything of what should be included in this map. We would like to see, yes, where are current agricultural lands? Also, where are our prime ag soils and our soils of state relevance? We would like to see what agricultural land is in current use and what agricultural land is in easements, what agricultural land is currently certified organic, where are we risking conversion out of ag land, again, to flooding or other changes in topography due to climate, to farmers retiring, and to development. On that last point, I want to make sure you all know that as we move into tier 1, which again, I support, I believe we need to create space for more development of housing, and eliminating some Act 250 jurisdiction in tier 1 does make sense. But there is an unintended consequence, I believe, which is that there, because of the way the tier 1 designated growth areas are designed, especially in our rural communities, we're going to pick up a lot of farmland around that tier 1 area that now comes out of Act 250 jurisdiction, and we have no way to plan for those agricultural assets as a state. Of course, each town can do that, but we are now putting the onus on towns to do a fairly complex level of future thinking about what kind of agricultural land resource will we need, and doing that in a town zoning by town zoning way. Yeah. Yes, please.
Have you answer that, ask your question, but I just sent the committee an email that I received from Ann Watson yesterday about this subject and what our opinions were, what my opinion was on it, which I told her we still hadn't got to it or researching or whatever. So you can see that, and that come from Caroline, who was just here, that email. So you're going to see that. So
my question is, what you're you're hoping to do is secure prime ag land so it doesn't get developed, kind of, correct?
What
In
I,
a sense.
yes, I mean, really what my goal is that as a state, we understand, what are our ag goals as a state moving forward. I believe that we have a number of reports. We have the New England Feeding New England, we have the Vermont Food System and Agricultural Strategic Plan, we have the Governor's Task Force on Future Ag. All of these reports say our agricultural lands are at risk and we need statewide strategic planning to
So,
decide how do we prioritize these lands. Yes,
So-
thank you.
point case, have
Yes.
some very nice land. It's agriculture wise, it's great land. The farmers would love it, but as the owners age, they decide they want to sell it off for building. It's perkable, it's great. So what do you say to them? Like, you're giving up prime ag. So does the state buy the land at the development price so that it stays? And then now the town is going to lose the tax dollars for that. Are you looking into that as you're doing this? Because the more the state buys the land, the less revenue we have to be able to buy other land or our services.
Mhm.
So where I like the premise,
Yes.
the outcome for the landowner or the individual, it wears on them. And I just don't see how we want the government buying our land and now we're gonna lose that tax base. Yes, you hate to lose the agriculture. What's happened in some cases, the local farmer comes in and buys it and then it goes into land use.
Yeah.
And so I worry when you say that, hey, we need to do this, and then our game plan is to buy that land and make it so that that person, if the state owns it and then just rents it. 2, we lose revenue off in it. And 3rd, I think it takes away from our individual rights of what we want to do to sell our land.
Thank you.
So I know you're probably concerned about that, but sometimes we barrel roll in trying to protect the land, but we don't see what it's doing to the people that farms the land.
I like appreciate your question so much because it is right on the nuanced edge here. I want to acknowledge agricultural land is often good developable land because it works well. So we have a conflict right there. What I'm proposing here is not any kind of solutions tool. This is not a tool of how are we going to protect those lands. This is a strategic planning tool. It is at the Regional Planning Commission level. Let's understand from a future land use map perspective, what are our agricultural needs for land? One of the issues that has really come up front and center for Land Access and Opportunity Board specifically is that we don't want to displace people at the cost of, we don't want to preserve agricultural land at the cost of people's homes. So we have to walk the line between both. As we look to more dense development in villages, especially for affordable housing, what that means is we're pushing more and more people out of having access to land. And so one small issue, it's not a small issue, it's a very big issue. One issue that we would love to see in a future land use map like this at the Regional Planning Commission level is that we can actually map smaller parcels, underutilized agricultural opportunities that are closer to downtowns and villages, which is in line with agricultural viability specs that we're seeing come out of the farm viability community. So whereas current use counts on larger parcels, 25 acres, 50 acres plus, there is a growing demand for smaller parcel sizes like 5 acres or 1 acre or even a half acre that is closer to where people are living in dense areas. If we can map that at the RPC level, then we can bring in all the different kinds of tools we have for agricultural land. That could be selling development rights for easements. It could be towns creating zoned areas like, oh, we're going to create like we have municipal forests. We can have a municipal community garden. That's a 1 acre, people grow together. This tool allows us to just, to not make any kinds of deals like the state's going to buy your land, but actually just look at the state in a coordinated way along with the recommendations that we see coming out of our strategic food systems planning to say, how will we need to, like, what is the data? This is basically baseline data on how do we even start to target where we need to preserve agricultural lands or retain them in some way. Does that answer your question? Or?
Pretty much.
Okay, so this is not a tool, it's not a proposal of any kind of solution. It is just baseline data. Where is the agricultural land that will serve our future food security needs?
So I have to jump
Yes.
upstairs to another committee in a second, but Jean,
Yes.
do you have any idea what it would cost the RPCs to do what you're asking them to do?
I don't, but I think that's obviously a great question to
Yeah,
ask.
I mean, I don't think they're just sort of sitting around waiting for more
No,
work to do.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
yeah, what I will say is I've sat in on about 6 of the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission focus groups on their future land use map. In every single one of those conversations, people have brought up the issue of, well, what is this? How do we understand what's happening with agricultural lands in this context? And they, they have said, well, in this map, all we've done is map current use. I don't mean to say that in any kind of derogatory. They have done a tremendous amount of work. And I have heard CCRPC say, we would like to dig deeper into this agricultural land issue. So I think there may be some interest from the RPCs to do this.
And in some of my research for testimony that I gave on Friday, 9% of Vermont's land is ag. Is that aligned with what you would believe?
I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, did you say 9?
9%.
like in current use, or how are you defining that?
Just a figure that came to me was
Got it.
9%
Okay.
of Vermont's land is actual and is agricultural land.
Just
Okay.
9%.
You know, that seems small, but maybe. Yeah.
A lot of.
I mean, when you think about it, it's undeveloped land that we have.
Right.
It's,
A
Right,
lot of, so 100 years ago, 80% of Vermont farmers it was clear, but now it's reforested, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of that prime ag land is forest land. That was once prime ag land.
Mhm,
That's why the forests grow there. I mean, it's good growing.
right.
Well, good. I sent the committee, Caroline's emails, and it
Thank
kind of
you.
talks a lot about what you just spoke about.
Great.
And I'm sure we'll be revisiting that.
9.4,
Yeah.
Wow.
That before. Yeah.
And that's in,
approximately 9.4
Farming.
Vermont land area, which is 5,443 acres, gross crops.
got it. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you.
everyone. Thank
Any more
you.
testifiers?
That's it.
Maybe just some discussion here.
Have a good day.
Great
Thank
discussion today. I appreciate, how we fleshed that out. And I hope that nobody felt that we pushed on them, but sometimes you gotta push on them, right? You gotta get down to it. I mean, some of these, the cannabis growers, they knew what they were getting into when they did it. And they did.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, hey, everybody wants to change things, right? And I don't make it bad either. So, I mean,
and it's new, you
Right.
know, it's developing
right.
still, you know.
Right, so to get both sides of that, but sometimes you get both sides of it, you gotta push. You gotta push, and you gotta see, well, aren't you putting yourself in front of somebody or whatever, or you knew going into it, and to see what their responses are. And I think that we were very fair with them and say, hey, bring us some language, we'll see where it goes, but also at the end of the day, I absolutely positively respect them for coming in and asking them for, trying to find a way to make it work for them. But I thought it was, I got some great points were made. And one of them was, it used to be, oh, well, it's organic, I'm just gonna pay more. People don't feel that way anymore. It's organic. Okay, that's good. But is it a good product? And if it's a good product, that's what drives people to pay more. And I think that was raised up in here, especially with the cannabis part of it, is that people just aren't gonna pay more because they hear the word organic. It still has to be something that they buy, and it's a potato, 95% of it is scabs, and then they have 10% of it, it has to be a good potato. And I think a lot of that is what, I think still be answered some of those questions today about finding value for your product, you know, just because you're growing, it's like, you know, everybody got into the hemp, everybody's gonna grow hemp, everybody's gonna be millionaires and grow hemp. But at the end of the day, the product they put out there was so inferior that it could never even be used for anything what it was supposed to be used for, especially the ingestible product that the market was looking for. You know, it just, most of that hemp product that was raised by people who don't understand it, you wouldn't even fed it to an animal.
Yeah.
Never mind the public. So, I just was kind of proud of the committee, today, the way you fleshed it out. And always respectful, of course, always respectful, but, I thought it was a good discussion that you guys, put forth today, and I appreciate it. So. Okay, other than that, anybody else? I know, Brian, you're gonna get going, anything else to chat about?
All set.
Okay, well, we'll call it a day.